What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sober Fix podcast. Another week sober, another episode. We got Robert on, recovery guy. We got Whitney on. She's got 18 months of sobriety. And we dive into all different topics related to addiction, finding a way to live sober, finding a way to improve that mental health, finding a way to get by day without having to turn to those substances. Whatever brings you to this channel, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for your guys' support. Thank you for the comments, the likes, the shares, all that good stuff. I love hearing from you guys. Let's get into this. All right, we are back, guys. We were just talking about being insane or sane or normal or what. You know how it is in recovery. We start to get that sanity back, and we start just living a better life. So we got Robert on, we got Whitney on again. Always a great time. They come with such great knowledge, and they're always willing to meet up and take time out of their schedule to come on here, answer a bunch of random questions that I throw at them pertaining to recovery, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you, both of you, for coming on again. Why don't we check in real quick like we normally do? I'll start with you, Whitney, and then we'll go over to Robert. What have you been up to, Whitney?
Man, I've had a great month. I just picked up 18 months, so that was a huge benchmark for me, loving it. I've also been sharing my story a bunch around town, and that's been a really great experience. I'm picking up sponsees where I go, and so I've got a whole new handful of fresh women in recovery, getting them fired up for this program. I am absolutely passionate about that. Other than that, you guys, just working, like trying to squeeze it all in. Life is good. Life has just never been better. So yeah, I'll pass it off to you, Robert.
You know, that's one of the reasons that I'm so glad that we're more than friends, Whitney, is that at 18 months, you're so energized, you're so confident that this thing works. And
yeah.
you've had your ups and your downs, but you're working in treatment now. You really got a taste of how good life can be, and you're not gonna let go.
Oh, hell no, I'm not
And
gonna go.
and that's exciting. I was thinking about you guys last night at the Friday night meeting and how I missed that at the Surf
Yes,
Lodge. And
I
yeah,
know, huh? Yeah.
I really do. I miss in the big book, it says that God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave on page 164. And, and I really crave fellowship, and I'm searching for it here, still getting acclimated to the Florida. The climate is easy because it was 80 degrees today, and I think it was 65 degrees in West Jordan, Utah.
Oh
So
yeah, it's
that's
cold.
easy part. But it's that fellowship you get so used to, and you so appreciate, like the people at the Palace, the people at Cirque, the meetings I would go to. However, my sponsees are keeping me real busy. And what I'm doing right now is I'm connecting sponsees with sponsees. So I'm connecting my grand sponsees with my sponsees, and I call them cousins, and they're helping them. So I'm backing away and creating a mentor status.
Yeah.
And my sponsees are handling the steps with the newcomers that I bring on board. And that seems to work really, really well. And so I have to be careful, though, because my time, Zig Ziglar said, those of you who don't know, Zig Ziglar is a motivational speaker, guy on goals and setting. But he said, don't mistake activity for accomplishment. So I try not to do that. I try to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I have the time to do it well.
Right.
So you know what I'm talking about? So
Yeah,
that's
it's
my
like,
focus now.
yeah, like quality. Like make sure yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Robert, I want to ask you real quick to tell us about speaking in Akron. I know we talked about it before we started, but
Yes.
let's hear
Yes.
about it.
Let's hear about it.
Not only Akron, but AA number one.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
It was the meeting that Bob started 90 years ago in 1935. And I had a great opportunity. One of my sponsees lives in the Akron area, and he picked me up from the airport, and it was a great time. He's actually assistant archivist for Dr. Bob's house. And so I got a tour, and I got a guided tour by the conservator of Akron Intergroup, and that was really cool. And I met a couple girls from Canada, um, Kimmy and Carrie, and Kimmy was celebrating 7 years sober, and that was
Nice.
really neat. And went to a meeting at the Mayflower Hotel where Bill made the infamous call to meet Bob. And then I went to the house where Bill and Bob met.
Jeez.
And I was walking on hallowed ground. It was akin to when I went to Gettysburg, and I stood as if I was watching Abraham Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address. It meant so much to me to be a part of something that changed our life. I mean, if it wasn't for Bill and Bob, what would people like us do? We'd be doomed, and we'd be lost forever. And so it was just really just a very healing and just a great time. And speaking was out of this world. I was very intimidated because it wasn't lost on me where I was and who I was standing in front of. And so there was the treatment center people there, and people there with the gal Beth, who heads us up, has 43 years sobriety. So there was a mixture of 30 days and then 43 years and everywhere in between. It was just an awesome experience, and I was
Nice.
very honored.
That's so cool. I think I saw a picture where it showed like the Mayflower Hotel, and it showed, I think, the phone or
Yeah,
something. And
yeah, yeah,
oh
Yeah.
man, I saw that, and it brought me right back to in the book where they talk about, I think Bill had like 6 months, and
yeah,
it was that
Yeah.
fork in the road where he could see I think he called it like the ballroom, where he could hear people
yeah,
drinking in there.
Yeah.
And it was like, he felt the pull. Do I go in there? And that's when he ended up grabbing the phone and grabbing the phone book and found someone that he could go help. And I remember thinking about that. I'm like, man, that was the make it or break it moment
yeah.
for the program. Really, it could have gone either way, but that's really
You
cool,
know,
Robert.
it was neat. And although they moved that area, they remodeled where Bill was. The proximity to where he heard the noise in the cafe and the music was still the same distance. So you could see, you could almost feel the pull that he was experiencing. And it was just neat to be there, and neat to be at the meeting. And it was awesome. Oh, check it out. So this is really cool. So we went and saw Dr. Bob's gravesite, and he's got
Oh,
the
wow.
four absolutes: honesty, unselfishness, love, and purity. And I got to take my 39-year chip off my key ring and place it on top of Bob's headstone. And periodically, someone comes by and collects those chips, and they give them away
Oh,
to
cool.
individuals in the area who are celebrating that length of sobriety.
That is so
Interesting.
neat. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, pretty cool.
What a cool experience,
Yeah,
Robert.
it was neat.
Wow. Yeah.
That's really cool. What was the energy like in that room? Could you feel it? Was it just kind of surreal?
I don't think I touched the ground at all. I think I was levitating. I think I was at least 6 or 8 inches above the ground. Um, yeah, it was really neat. And again, it wasn't lost on me the responsibility that I had to deliver a message that that the people of Akron would expect from someone who's been sober as long as I've been allowed to be sober. So it was just a neat experience overall. The people were very gracious, yet they were very serious.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, thank you for talking about that, Robert. I have a few of these questions here, like we normally do. I think I'll go to you first, Whitney. It says, what first led you to recognize that you had a problem with alcohol or drugs?
Well, okay. So my story goes back to I actually remained sober up until I was 21. So I was well into college before I started partying. And my consequences started happening immediately. I got in trouble with the law immediately. And it was like, bam, bam, bam. My life just like blew up in flames right away. That wasn't enough for me to like admit I had a problem. That was not enough for me to think like, oh, maybe I should like seek out some sort of help or treatment or so I kept living that way in and out of jail for quite some time. When I realized I had a problem, it was when I actually tried to stop, whether it be for the law or I went to treatment. And I absolutely couldn't stop something as simple as smoking weed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had the federal courthouse telling me, like, you need to pee clean for marijuana here in a week. And I couldn't even stop smoking weed, let alone the harder stuff, you know? And so this is when I kind of knew I was maybe different than all of my friends that were out drinking on the weekends and then still holding their jobs. I would carry through and through. I mean, there was just no end to it, you know? And so that's when I think I realized, okay, I'm sick or I have addiction or I have is abnormal.
Yeah, you put that so well. I can relate to that so much. I remember I had legal issues, right? Kind of the same thing. I started later. I started at 17, 18, which is late for a lot of people that I hear as well. And
Mhm.
I just had issues right away. And I remember I had a probation officer from the time I was 18 till I got sober, basically. And they would try and help me out so much. They would give me so many breaks. They just wanted
Yeah.
me to do well. And it was the same thing. I went through the same exact cycle where I'd try and get high or drink or whatever it was for a few days. And then I would say, okay, I test on Wednesday. I
Yeah.
have to cut it off by Friday night. I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever cut it off in time. I either cut it real close or I just could not stop at all. But so I could
Yeah.
totally relate to that. That's thank you for sharing that, Whitney. Robert,
Yeah.
I got one for you. It says, "How did you find your way into AA or recovery? Was it through someone else, a moment of clarity, or rock bottom?"
Mm.
You know, that's a great question. And I think finding your way, because like Whitney, I didn't stay sober. Like you, I didn't stay sober when I originally found my way. Um, I looked in the mirror and everyone was gone. The voices that I was hearing of disappointment, of disappointing family members and loved ones, they were gone. And I stood in the mirror and I was 32 years old and I was going to die and there's nothing I could do about it. So that introduced me to AA, though it took more for me to admit I was alcoholic. And I was just looking in my big book under Physician Heal Thyself in the third um, uh, edition, and Dr. Paul says something very interesting. He says, "With or without my permission," I'm paraphrasing here, "maybe I am an alcoholic of sorts." And it's the famous um, line that we discuss where I think he says something to the effect was uh, agreement or um, acceptance was the answer to all my problems.
Mhm.
It's from that area. So that ushered me into treatment. However, when I relapsed after 71 days, I I sat in the hotel room trying to recapture that feeling of being an almost, is what I call it. Because I came from nothing, I was a nothing, and alcohol made me feel like an almost. And when you're going to be nothing forever, being an almost is like the top of the world. You guys know what I'm talking about, and so does our audience. So I sat up in this hotel room, and the only place for me to go back to, I had no money, I was homeless, or going to be the next day, and there was no family to go back to. And I thought, and I sat up there in the hotel and tried to recapture, and there was nothing. And I thought, maybe I am them. Maybe, because I just couldn't admit to my innermost self that I was alcoholic on page 30. And so in that hotel room, I went back to AA and I became an alcoholic. I was one for a long time, but until you know you are, you're not. You know, Whitney or Drew, you could tell me all the time, my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, my ex-wives, they could say, you have a problem with alcohol. And I would say, no, I don't. My problem is with you telling me I have a problem with alcohol. And I understood the difference between reciting the steps and working the steps. And when I came back, probably similar to you, Whitney, and to you, Drew, when I came back and I'm not sure who confronted who, my sponsor or me, but it was decided that I would do everything that he said to do, including getting on my knees and saying the third step prayer and saying, you know, maybe I am an alcoholic of sorts. And then the most liberating thing for me was one day I raised my hand. My name is Robert. I'm an alcoholic. And I meant it. I didn't care what you thought of me anymore. I just cared that I I began to develop a life that sounded like your life because I didn't know what to do. You know, I'd I'd been drinking all this time, but I was never an alcoholic until I said I was. And so it was very freeing for me. And the most free thing I've ever done, guys, is work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That has been my passport to freedom. And I've never stopped after, 39 years, 5 months, and I don't know, 28 days or something crazy number like that. I'm actually more excited about the 12 steps and the plan of recovery and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and meetings and sponsees than I was when I first walked into the room.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I think that's like that's a lot of hope for people that are starting off. That someone could be sober so many years and be so on fire for it, and still say, "Look, it's working. I still enjoy it. It's still gets
You know,
me going."
let me add. I was in a meeting last night, and the guy who's 68 years old, and he found out he has cancer.
Oh,
And my heart really went out to him. And you know what, guys? I have no problems. I have no world. I'm 71 years old and I'm healthy as can be. I got a great head of hair. I'm incredibly charming, and I owe everything to the program of alcoholics, and I have no real world problems. I am so fortunate, so blessed, so encouraged by what God has kept me from, as well as what God's given me as a result of my pursuing Him.
yeah, I really like what you said too, Robert, about just we got to recognize ourselves. It was the
Yeah,
same thing for me when I finally said it, and the key word meant it. When I finally
yeah.
meant it and said, "Hey, look, there's something going on here," and that's when things finally started to get better. I want to ask you, Whitney. You got another question here. It says, "What was your mindset walking into your first meeting of recovery?"
Well, I love that you asked me this question because when I went into my first AA meeting, I thought it was a load of crock. I was in treatment, and so our treatment center required us to go to these meetings. And I remember specifically thinking, okay, fine, I'll go, but I'm just going to prove to everybody that this shit's crazy and that it doesn't work. And especially for people like me, like I've tried everything else. Why would this work, especially when I'm not open to it. So why force me to go? I had the worst attitude about it could have had, so I go to like one or two of these meetings, and all of a sudden I'm not like sleeping through them. I'm like, perking up a little bit. I see someone walk in and like on this panel, and they like start talking, and I'm like, oh, I could be her friend, like she's kind of telling my story a little bit. Like I can relate to her, and it was this slow evolution of like, these people like are speaking my language, and I was so against like the people that would be in these rooms. I was so judging a book by its cover. Like I wasn't even willing or open minded to hear any of it, and slowly but surely I started to hear it, listen to it, started to believe it a little bit, and in no time I was excited to go to those meetings. So if you have like a big whatever, maybe a resentment towards AA or some sort of doubt, I mean, just all you need is like that teeny, teeny, teeny 1% willingness to
Yes.
show up and just open your ears a little bit and see what happens from there.
Yeah, it's crazy how it changes too. It was the same thing for me. I had to go because of rehab, and I just didn't even know what I wanted. I didn't know where to even start. I felt like I had so many things going on, but it was the same thing for me. I just started to listen, and then eventually I started to hear something changed. I don't know when exactly it changed, but I kind of went from trying to like prove that I couldn't relate to everyone to starting to finally relate, and that's when things started to get way better. Robert, I got another one for you. It says, how long did it take for you to feel comfortable sharing openly in recovery meetings?
Oh, well, again, a tale of two cities. In the beginning, when I knew I was holding back and I knew I wasn't being honest, it was easy for me to share. I just didn't share the things that I thought would lead to you not liking me. And so I would hold those back. So it's easy to share when you're not honest. And I wasn't honest. When I came back, I I I was afraid that I would relapse again. And so I wanted to get involved in things. And the only way to get involved was to avail myself to select others, because there were certain people in the rooms, and I know you both have experienced it, that I wanted what they had. You know, I wanted what everyone had in sobriety, but I wanted what certain individuals had. Startled me. Something just dropped.
Yeah, I heard that.
I thought it was an alligator coming into my garage. Always worry of them.
Only in
They're
Florida.
bigger than me, and so um, it was a different kind of intimidation. Then I was I was more afraid of giving you the truth. I knew I had to, because I knew what had me go out after 71 days was my lack of honesty. So I knew I had to become honest with you, but it was going to be how and what I chose and who I chose to share with. I wasn't the type of guy that laid everything out in a meeting. I was very selective. I would go to men primarily. I would go to men after the meeting and say, "Do you have a few moments? I need to share something with you." I was very private, not as you hear me now. I mean, I have no secrets, because I'm so confident that this thing works. But in the beginning, it was very challenging for me, and when I realized I was okay, that the things I was sharing, I had one guy one time. I shared something with him. He said, "Is that all you did? Is that it?" It was like, you know, wait till you hear my story. And he started sharing. I said, I thought, man, you're really sick. You you need treatment. You need help beyond AA. And it was a way of me realizing that that I wasn't as bad as I thought I was. And one thing that's really important for the audience out there: the sooner we realize that we're sick people trying to get well, not bad people trying to get good. And I know I've said it before and I'll say it again, but it's a real stumbling block. Now, granted, we did bad things, but we did bad things not because we're bad. We did bad things because that's what sick people do. When we're emotionally sick and spiritually sick, and even some cases physically sick, we do bad things, just almost as a defense mechanism. And when I made that leap to where I was a sick person trying to get well, not a bad person trying to get good, it opened up doors for me.
Yeah, it changed a lot for me when I realized it took me kind of being around you guys and here and having a recovery kind of stuff going on and having a community of people to start to understand that a lot of us did similar things, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel quite as bad. And the longer I was sober, I started to realize that, like, just how little control I really had towards the end,
Yeah.
and that whole understanding that I was very sick, it made me feel a little bit
Yeah.
better because I used to beat myself up constantly over everything that had gone on, and when I was able to finally tell myself like, "Whoa, I was really sick back then," I feel like it started to help me heal a little bit. I wasn't as harsh on myself and stuff, and it started to
Yeah.
get better.
And, I'm not saying I was sick and I did bad things so I'd get a pass,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but sick people act sick. And I was really sick, and I'm not asking for any any extra grace for amends that I had to make. Some people, there's a boundary between them and me, and that's for their protection. They feel they need that boundary, and that's okay. I harm them tremendously, and I can't go back and change that. So I'm not excusing myself from the bad things I did. I just want to recognize from what standpoint I did those things. I was always like Laura's my third marriage. I've been married over 36 years. I've always been a good husband. Alcohol just got in the way. Every alcohol got in the way of everything. Every attempt I ever tried to make of being a good person, alcohol stunted my growth or sent me off on a detour.
Hmm. Yeah, like all the moral backfire that I had, right? Like towards the end, it got so bad because you get in this like need to survive that like you're
Yeah.
just doing whatever it takes to survive and get well and and I think that's what my jumping off point was because that end I was using probably more substances than ever before. And it was entirely because I was just running away from all that guilt and that shame. And like I could not feel good about myself for 1 second, Like reality would set in for even like a split second and I would have to just get fixed, So I didn't think about it and think of all the things I was doing to my family and think of all the things I was doing with the people I apparently loved around me. And that's like when you can't go forward and you can't go back, it's like a really crazy place to be. And that was my spiritual bottom. And that's what it took for me to kind of find this program.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking about when you were saying that, Whitney, is how a lot of times towards the end we can't even outrun that shame. Like we can't even
Hmm.
Yeah. Good point.
like in
Yeah.
the beginning you can. It's almost like oh, I got these negative consequences the first few years, but man, I feel good when it's good, and it kind of outweighs it. And then you get towards the end, you're like, I just can't even get well anymore. I can't even feel better for very long. That's what it kind
Yeah.
of reminded me of.
Yeah. That hopelessness. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I got a comment that we can. This is from Justin. This was on YouTube a couple days ago. We could just comment on this. It says, I lost literally everything I've owned. I am 10 years sober and homeless and almost hopeless. I had quit shooting heroin and meth, but I believe God has a plan for me. So it sounds like still sober, but circumstances ended up to where he's homeless. He's 10 years sober and homeless and hasn't turned to the drugs. And he's saying God has a plan for him. What is that? What comes up for you, Robert, when you hear that?
You know, sometimes and if this person was with us right now, I would ask them a series of questions. However, and how long has he been homeless? Did he,
Ah, it doesn't say.
yeah,
Doesn't
did
say.
things happen? To just say I'm 10 years sober and I am this. Um, I would say, though, in a nutshell, that God has carved out a path that is more difficult for some of us than it is for others. And I don't pretend to know God's mercy any more than I know his grace. I just know that, as my understanding, God will have mercy on those. It's like when I mentioned earlier, the guy who had cancer, and I realized I have no world problems. I have no, I found out yesterday, Laura and I found out that we're going to have our 11th grandchild, which is
Nice.
a joyous celebration. And even though my son's going to get deployed in December, he's going to a relatively safe place. And so every aspect of my life is, I've been able to dodge bullets that life sends your way. And some people can't. Some people have, I'm not sure if the guy lost his job and then he lost his house and then he lost his car, then he became homeless. I don't know if if he has a sponsor, if he's been working the program, or he's just not using. I don't know. What I do know though is that I don't try to suppose God. I just thank him for what he's given me, and I'm very grateful. I was talking to Natalie earlier today and recounting the time that that I would go into prisons and institutions in California and in Utah, and every time they shut the door behind me when I was leaving, God reminded me of what he spared me from.
Oh yeah.
And I live in that gratitude of not only what God has done, my higher power has done, but what my higher power did not allow.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I would encourage this young person. And Drew, you have my permission to give him my contact number. I hope he's listening. Hope he listens. And feel free to give him my number or give him yours. Get him get him plugged in one way or another with some people who can give him hope. Because at the end of hope, there's dope. And so anyway,
That's
I
what
have more
stood out to
thoughts.
me. That's what stood out to me about his comment was he's almost hopeless. He said
Yeah,
he was almost hopeless, and it's like, dude, if you've got that little bit of hope, like hold on to that, because so many people don't have hope at some point. And like you said, I love what you said about gratitude for like the things that maybe haven't happened, and it's hard in that situation to see
yeah,
that. But I love what you said about finding him a resource, or some sort of fellowship, in this community to get him some support and some direction. And I think he would drastically benefit from like finding a program or a
yeah.
sponsor or something along those lines.
And also, you bring up a good point. Hanging on to that hope.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and if
huge.
he's if he depending upon where he is homeless, he can always go into the Salvation Army.
Mhm.
Southern California is very big on Salvation Army. If he's in SoCal, if he's around a rescue mission, I know there's a lot of facilities and places. A lot of treatment centers take Medicare, and and there's a place for them. We just might need to explore those opportunities for this person. Whitney, obviously works in treatment in Utah, and so and Jason T, has his hand just about everything. So there's a place for him if he wants to
Mhm.
get off the street.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I like what you said too, guys, about like holding on to the hope and find somewhere quick. Find somewhere
Yeah.
quick because when I read this comment this week, I was thinking, 10 years, that's basically, almost double what I have. And I was thinking, so what if I was homeless, 10 years sober, had a little bit of hope, like I would need to get plugged in if I wasn't plugged in already
Yeah.
because I could see how that could go wrong pretty quick where it's like, man, I'm not supposed to be homeless at 10 years sober. I'm supposed to have this and I'm supposed to have that. And so I hope that you're plugged in, man. I hope that like Robert and Whitney said, great advice on making sure that you're just not out there alone trying to deal with all this alone. If you really need a place to go, they're out there. Find the resources. Let me know. I'll reach out to you. I'll give you my number and Robert's number. And
Yeah.
thanks for that comment, man. And stay safe out there. Let me
Yeah.
see. Let me see what else we had for the questions here. I'll go to you, Whitney, on this one. How do you handle cravings or moments if the thought of using crosses your mind?
Well, I have to rewind back a little bit. It's been a while since I've had any thoughts for use or any actual, I mean, we call them Cravings and treatment, and then we call them something else in AA, right? Anyways, I did have a system, and when it happened, I immediately would, and I'm a spiritual person, so I would immediately pray, pray for that obsession to be removed, whatever it is. And then I would also always call a sponsor or another alcoholic, a friend, tell on myself, get accountable with somebody. That was always huge. If I can get accountable with somebody else about how I'm feeling and how I'm wanting to use, I'm almost always going to be safe. And that's just proven itself. And then to top it all off and to clear my head, I'd do something for somebody else. So some small act of kindness, some small bit of service can almost always guarantee that I would stop thinking about that obsession would pass, and they do say, a craving or an obsession or a moment like that usually passes within 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm a big believer in distraction. If it comes to that, it works and it helps. But yeah, that's usually my system. 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. I love that. That was a great answer. You gave him a bunch of stuff to work with. This is what Whitney does. Try some
That's
of
just
it.
what I do, but
Yeah, and I encourage anyone to try it. See if it works for you. You never know. You may try something that other people do to stay sober and realize, man, this is it. This is helping me a lot. So, Robert, this is another one you can comment on. It says, I've been watching the person that I love relapse over and over, and it is the most painful thing I've ever lived with. Yeah, that's rough. Do you have any comments on that, Robert?
Al-Anon.
Yeah.
yeah.
Go to Al-Anon. Because somebody in that family dynamic has to be getting well. And it although it may not help the person who is addicted, it'll help you understand that there's nothing you can do but get well yourself. And feeling isolated and alone, I think that's what many people of addiction, we've all felt that no one feels like I feel, no one can understand me, no one knows what I'm going through. And then we get introduced to a room and everyone in the room knows what we're going through.
Yeah.
And that camaraderie and that joyousness it talks about on page 17 talks about how it pervades the vessel from steroids, the lowest part, to the captain's table, to the highest part. And that's what Al-Anon can bring a codependent. It helps know that you're not alone. And sometimes knowing that you're not alone begins the healing process. Like other people feel the same way. My friend Susie, that I think she's going to be on your show again coming up soon, right?
Yeah.
And Susie's an Al-Anon friend of mine. And Susie will talk about her husband, Brian, who died of cancer as a result of neglecting his health as a result of alcoholism. And Susie realized that somebody in that family dynamic had to get well. And what really helped Susie a lot was going to Al-Anon and exploring those relationships and realizing she wasn't alone. There were other people feeling the same abandonment, feeling the same powerlessness uh, that she was feeling, and that gave her, as we talked about before, that was her entrance into hope. She couldn't do anything for Brian any more than Sue or Kathy could do anything for me, any more than Whitney's parents could do anything for her. Those who loved you couldn't do anything for you, but they could go on a path of wellness themselves to come into an understanding that there's nothing they were doing or nothing they weren't doing that was causing the person to drink or use or act out in a destructive behavior. So go to Al-Anon, and matter of fact, if they need some Al-Anon contacts, no matter where they live, we can get those Al-Anon contacts for them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forget about that as well. That now we know people that would be perfect for
Yeah.
them to talk to, and just to because I feel like I hear a lot from the family members of those that have someone who's in addiction. They kind of feel like sometimes they don't talk about it with their friends all the
Yeah.
time because
Mhm.
they
It's a
don't want to
dirty
be.
secret.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
family secret, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like us when we first used to act like everything was okay. Oh, I'm good, I'm okay. I feel like they kind of feel the same thing sometimes, where it's like, oh, our family's good, things are getting better and stuff like that. But
Well, oftentimes, since our focus is protecting the supply, we often blame people who are trying to help us get better.
yeah,
It was never my fault. It was never Whitney's fault. It was never your fault, Drew.
Ever.
It was the people surrounding us. Would you just leave me alone? Just leave me alone. Just get off my back. That's the problem. It's not that I drink. It's not that I use. It's that you're bugging me about it, and just stop it. Because you're my insanity, not the way I was living, not the way I was acting out, but you were. And so I would imagine that this person is picking up on some of that blame, some of that guilt, because it's never the alcoholic's fault. It's only our fault when we're in recovery. When we're in active addiction, it's everybody else's fault.
oh, it's the cops' fault. I used to live in a city where they were just way too funded, and they had way too many cops on every corner, and I was just getting very unlucky, and they treated me like shit, and it was their fault.
Yeah.
And then I got sober, and I realized like they never bothered me ever.
Yeah.
It was I was such a red flag. Hey, come over here, bust me, please. I got stuff on me, but
Oh,
it's
Whitney will
it.
tell you, because as a person who works in treatment right now, things that I worked in treatment 30 years ago, and Whitney works it's nothing's changed. It's everybody else's fault, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We're the victims. We are the victims, right? But one thing I wanted to mention, so since we're on this Al-Anon thing, and my parents, I put them through hell, right? And they tried everything, and they thought, what can I do? They're in this very LDS community, so it was like hush hush. They didn't want to talk about it. While I was in residential treatment, one of the girls that I would say got up and told my story, she had been recovered for what, like 8 years sobriety at that point, and had her parents come in, and like very much like my parents, very much like my mom was just like her mind was blown that like somebody else was like speaking her language and understanding what she's going through, and she related to her so much that it was like she didn't even know Al-Anon existed. And so I mean it was like a huge game changer for my
Yeah.
parents to be able to even know one other couple out there that is going through the same thing that
Yeah.
they could talk to and get numbers from and rely on, or ask questions if they need to. It was huge for my parents. I
Yeah.
mean, it was immediate like relief for them.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
Yeah, that's a great point. It was the same thing. I remember there was a shift in the relationship between me and my parents when they started getting well themselves. Like you talked about Robert and Whitney. It was I don't know. I think they just kind of understood that they didn't have too much control over the situation. I think
yeah.
is what it was, and it was. I could tell a difference in them when they finally had people that they could talk to and they could relate to.
Yeah.
It was it
100%.
it was weird. It was, I could tell something was going on because I think we talked about this, Robert, when we were talking to Susie, is like, I always viewed Al-Anon as the enemy. When they start going there, everything's going to get worse. And it actually, in a weird way, was the opposite. I think they understood
Yeah.
me a little bit more. So I just want to throw
You
that out
know,
there.
Susie's so funny. She tells a story like when she heard a person share that they wanted to suffocate their alcoholic while they slept. And Susie said, "You wanted to do that too? I thought that was a terrible thing. And of course you want to strangle us. Of course you want to burn our bed with us
Yeah.
in it. Of course you want to, you know, um, do something to our tires so we'll get in an accident just so the madness will stop, you know, just so the insinuation will stop, just so the madness. I just want to rest. And Susie has some hilarious stories regarding what she heard in the rooms of Al-Anon, but all to the point, Drew, where you had mentioned you're just not alone anymore. And Whitney, when your mom and dad realized that, they're not the only one as a son or a daughter and it's not their fault.
I
it's
know.
the responsibility of the alcoholic addict. It's their responsibility. Their responsibility is not killing us in our sleep.
That's
Yes.
funny. I'm imagining one of them, someone in there shares that, and then they're all like, "That's exactly how I felt." But
Oh, they laugh at the, oh, you thought that too. Oh my goodness. I can share that out loud and no one thinks I'm homicidal.
that's funny. That is so
That
funny.
is way funny.
Let me see what we had here. I said, I'll go to you for this, Whitney, or I'll go to both of you for this because it's kind of cool. But how have your relationships changed since getting sober? We'll start at you, Whitney, and we'll go to you, Robert.
Oh man. I mean, so much, right? I don't even know where to start with this one. I burned every relationship, good or bad, into the ground. And thank goodness with the program and the steps, I'm able to repair a lot of that. It's not quickly, definitely slowly, but
Yeah.
I have been able to repair a lot of that. And but my relationships that I'm able to build from the fresh start that I have in this program are beautiful, and they're genuine, and they're authentic, and I feel like they're just so different than any relationship I ever had, even before I was ever using drugs. Like, this program has taught me how to interact with people, to be an adult, to be a human being, to like have compassion for people, to be honest, like everything that you would expect a normal human being to have capacity for. Like, I actually didn't have that capacity before coming into this program. This program didn't just get me sober, this program completely changed my life, saved my life in ways that I can't express. But very much so in relationships and how I operate with people and how I see people non-transactionally anymore. Like, I see them as human beings. And I know that sounds very hollow, but I know all the alcoholics out there can relate. Um, yeah, it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful creating new relationships, and yeah.
Yeah. What about you,
I'm just
Robert?
I'm just gonna sign my name to what Whitney just said. I can't add. She said it so eloquently and so beautifully. I won't say anything at all.
Yeah, right? No, it was really well. And Whitney, it's like again, it's another one that I could totally relate to. And I like what you said. It's like things just got way more authentic when I got sober. It was and I like what you said about the non-transactional because
Yeah, that was good.
yeah, it seemed like, there was the obvious transactional ones, but then there was the ones that I was always looking for something,
Mhm,
and it was always about me, basically.
mhm.
I felt like my relationships were always one-sided, and it took me a while to realize that, and kind of you guys in the recovery program showed me that, and by other people sharing about themselves and kind of saying, "Look, I was selfish when I was doing this, and when I was self-seeking, and everything was about me." And so it's cool to look back on that stuff now and see how the relationships have changed. Because for me, I wasn't going to work on any of that until I could recognize that I was always self-seeking and stuff. But
Yes, yes.
let me see.
I will add to
Yeah,
what
go
you
ahead.
said, Drew. Um, you used the word selfish and self twice. And it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that selfishness and self-centeredness, we believe this is the root of all of our problem. So when I get down to the core of not being selfish and not being self-centered, I become the person that Whitney described.
100%
Yeah.
agree with that.
Let me see. It says, I got another question here. I'll start with you, Robert. It says, how do you navigate life events? And then it has in parentheses, grief, stress, success, without turning back to substances or alcohol.
You know, now it's easy. In the beginning, it was challenging because I had to understand that I came into treatment with a bucket load of problems. Some were manufactured, some were as a direct result of my drinking and using and neglecting. And so I was very fortunate that I had a great group of people, men, who held my hand and who walked me through what I thought were insurmountable problems. You know, it says in the doctor's opinion, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired over solving any of them, now finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only requirement necessary is to follow a few simple rules. So I had men teach me not to focus on the problem, focus on the rules. If I, like Whitney was saying, if I learned how to live differently, I could expect different results. And so one of my friends, Tom Bennett, who actually was irreplaceable in my recovery, but he died during a relapse, and that's a long story, and it was very sad. Tom said, "Whatever set of problems you have today, in 6 months you're going to have a brand new set,"
Mm.
and that was so helpful to me. It didn't mean I was able to ignore my life's problems. It just meant I was able to organize them, you know, and address them one at a time. The first thing I had to do was stop running from the law. I had to go turn myself in. And then when I found out I was legal, then I I I went to find a job. And then once I had a job, I went back and I got my driver's license. And so I was fortunate. And again, if you don't have a sponsor, get someone like Whitney has Heather, and she's got Jason, who really instruct her along the way. And you have your support group, and say, this is what I wanted to accomplish. Help me accomplish this. Help me systematically go through, and how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's what we need to do in recovery. We come in with a myriad of problems. Some are real, some are manufactured, some don't exist. But when we systematically, one by one, handle what we can handle in a course of time, we get better. And that encourages us to go handle more stuff. It's kind of like amends.
Yes.
Joe and Charlie, go ahead, talk about that, Whitney, how important that is.
Well, I was just gonna add that first when I had all these problems, like the wreckage, right? Like we
Yeah.
faced this wreckage and we tried to
Yeah.
clear it up. And so I feel like I'm pretty well through all of that kind of repair. And now I'm to a point in my sobriety where little things pop up like that. Like you would think they're problems or grief or challenges or something hard, trials. My whole approach is so different. Like now I see them as opportunities for growth, and now I like crave
Yeah.
them, which is weird because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, look how much I like get to
Bring it
grow,
on.
and like, yeah, like let's keep this ball going and let's keep becoming better. And so that's just one way to look at it if things seem devastating. Like at least this is an opportunity for some growth and maybe a new perspective, and maybe, like you're going to come out the other side better for this.
You
And I don't
know,
know.
no,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense. It's almost like, okay, what's next? What can I accomplish here? If I can do that, I can do this. If I can do this, I can do that. And it becomes very stair stepping, you know, and there's nothing like getting the wind behind you. It propels you because success breeds success. Nothing like success to create success.
Mhm.
Yeah, when you guys were talking about that, I was picturing how kind of someone just starting off and they look around and they just think they have every problem in the world. And we have a lot, many of us when we start. And they don't really know that they can get through them yet until they do start getting through them. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden they start knocking stuff out, like Robert mentioned with the amends. And you start knocking some of those problems out and you realize, man, I could actually do this. I can actually do that. I was picturing Whitney like saying, come on, problems, like bring it on, and she's tackling all of
Yeah.
them and stuff. But
I'm ready. Let's go.
yeah, we're getting kind of towards the end here. Let me see what this one says. It says, was it your turn, Whitney, or is it Robert's? I forget.
It's always girls go first.
All
Always.
right,
No,
all right, we'll
it's
go to you. It says,
It's always Whitney's turn.
yeah, it's always Whitney's turn. Sobriety, change the way you see yourself and your
Wow.
purpose today. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's
oh,
very good.
I know we're kind of short on time, but I could go on for like a whole hour about this.
Just an
Um,
hour?
Just an hour. So, like Robert kind of touched on earlier, right? Like in my 20-year spree, I should have died 100 different ways. I should have been in prison, probably like still, like for sure, like for years to come. I should have maybe killed a family driving homicidally. I should have, there's so many things that could have gone so much worse. And I look back at that now, and in the time I'm like, I'm such a victim. Like all this stuff happens to me and I don't even deserve it, right? I look back now and I'm like, the presence of God in my life, even in my worst, even at my very worst, spiritually in every way, was like there was just a hand on my shoulder through all of it. And I never, that is why I believe in God today. That is why like I never stopped believing in a higher power. But that's also why I'm convinced that I have a purpose today. If I came out on top of, or came through that, and like I'm alive on the other side somehow in some way, and I got into treatment and got some recovery, that is a miracle for somebody like me. 100%. And I am sure of it that I have purpose now. There's no question in my mind. Like that's why I live and breathe today, because I have purpose for once, finally. Um, the way I look at myself differently, everything of the transformation that has happened from the person on the streets a couple years ago to the person that exists today, it's like I wouldn't even recognize myself. And coming into the program, I remember actually thinking, I don't want to lose like my edge. Like that's so much of who I am, like this little gangster from the streets. Like I don't, want to lose this personality. And that's one of the first things, like you will go up over or undergo a giant personality change, right? That's like what
Yeah.
happens if you work the steps. That's a promise. And that's exactly what happened. I'm a completely different person with completely different, like, just everything has changed. So I thank God and this program for that. Like, I'm just so happy to look in the mirror today and so happy that I'm nothing like who I was a couple years ago.
You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, go ahead,
let
Robert.
me, Whitney's said a word that's not often used. She used the word personality, which is very profound. Um, I just want to say that for those who are watching this, we didn't just luck into this. We worked hard to feel the way we feel. You've worked hard for your time. Whitney's worked hard for her time. And I've worked hard for my time. And people of recovery, we're givers. Drew, you work, you're going to school, you're doing your podcast, you're going to meetings. Whitney, you work in treatment. You go to meetings, you're active with your sponsor. Same with me. You talked about sponsees that you have, Whitney. And it's not by accident. We just didn't stumble upon this and sit on the couch eating bonbons and our life changed.
Yeah.
We actually pursued this life we live. We pursued it. And God owning everything, our higher power owns everything. But
Mhm.
Whitney, you mentioned personality, and it says in spiritual experience on page 569, spiritual
That's what I was
experience.
referring to. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself amongst us in many different forms. So I don't know if you knew how profound you would be in Whitney, but that's so necessary, because we have to have a personality change. We have to change our
Mhm.
outlook. We have to change not everything what we do, but what we think about what we're doing. Because if we change what we do without that personality change, we're going to go back, because at some point, without the personality change, we become in pain again, and
Yeah.
pain requires medication. And medication for us is alcohol, drugs, anything that will burn our life to the ground one more time. And if we don't experience a personality change, we're doomed. And the personality change doesn't come upon us. We have to work for it, and we work.
Yeah, that's a great point too, and it's something I could totally relate to, Robert. And we didn't just trip and fall and kind of
Yeah.
get to this place. It's taken a lot, but the beauty of it is it's there for everyone if they're willing to start really rebuilding and really staying consistent and just admitting that there's a problem. Man, the opportunities are going to open up and get
Yeah.
connected and get into recovery and build some support and find a mentor, a sponsor, someone that can kind of guide you through in the beginning and really help you dive into this thing. Cause a lot of us have many questions. That's why we answer a lot of these questions. Cause we know that you're starting off, you're brand new. Where do I start? Where do I even,
You know,
I want to get
you
sober, but
know
where do I go? Yeah.
what Whitney said, let me just add to that.
Yeah.
We work, and I don't work anymore, but there was a time I worked. Um, and I worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And when I got that check that was sufficient to my labor, I didn't give it away. I gave it away, but I didn't. I let it be an example. So my point is that we work for everything we get. Whitney bought a condo last year, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm not sure where you live, but I'm sure it's a nice place, Drew. And I live in a beautiful home. We work for that. So everything we do, again, we just didn't wake up one morning and just praying, oh God, thanks for this life. That's how we were. We acted one way and we expected to get rewards. Now we act in concert with the rewards we're given.
Mhm.
And we give away our sobriety, we give away the results, but we don't give away our pay. You have to go earn your own pay. I can't give you a higher power. I can't do your 4-step for you, as my sponsor would say. You have to do it yourself. If you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. That's what it says on page
Yeah, and
59.
that reminds me, Robert. I remember sitting in detox one time, and this lady, she's like, "If I could give you guys recovery right now and just hand it to you, I wouldn't." And I'm like, "Come on, we need it, we need it."
Yeah.
And she basically, in different words, but kind of the same
Yeah.
tone or point, said, I'd rob you of the journey that you've got to kind
Mhm.
of go on yourself, and that's what that reminded me of. Guys, we're over an hour. That was quick. That was crazy. It's
Dang.
it's
Time
easy talking
flies
to
when we're
these
having
two, but
fun.
It sure does.
yeah. Hey, thank you again, guys, taking the time to come on here, answer a bunch of random questions I throw at you. Thank you for anyone watching as well. All right, guys, we made it to the end of the episode. Don't forget to check out our TikTok. We also have an Instagram. And if you want to come on the show, you want to tell your story, reach out to me, soberfixpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, guys.